We're at part 5 of the neural tissue, and we're working on action potentials here. We've already figured out resting potential, and we're comparing the membrane of a resting potential to the membrane of an action potential. And down here, they kind of do it for us. Okay, so I've had to make a little bit of an amendment in order for the graph to work correctly. So here's the sodium channel right here. And basically, this represents permeability. Here again, they have the action potential. Do you see it? It's coming from rest. It's passing threshold. It's going up here beyond zero to a fully depolarized situation. The sodium channels close. The potassium channels open. We get repolarization. We even go past resting potential to this little hyper polarized situation and then back to rest. Okay, so what's really going on here is I've drawn in sodium for you. So once sodium permeability, and this is sodium permeability here, see, sodium permeability, and their little orange line is going too slowly, I'm afraid. In order for the action potential to actually go up this way, you actually have to have the sodium permeability leaking over here. And once there's enough movement through the sodium channel, then we're going to pass threshold, and we're going to have an all or nothing event here, which is depolarization. Okay? And then we're going to have closure of the sodium channel, and we're going to have the potassium come out from the inside of the axon to the outside to repolarize. Okay, and that's going to come down. The green here is, in this case, the potassium. So here's the potassium. It's beginning to flow in here. And we're at its peak, we're really getting sort of the major inflection here, downward inflection of this repolarization event. Okay, and this is potassium permeability. Ultimately, once the sodium flows in, and we have depolarization, and once the potassium flows out, and we have repolarization, then the pump, there's a whole series of pumps here, they're going to take that sodium and pump the sodium back out, and they're going to take the potassium in exchange for the sodium and pump the potassium back in. Okay, and these channels will then close after having been open. Okay, so that's the deal. That's one complete cycle of an action potential event in a particular area. Of course, these things are going to actually take movement on a molecular basis, which means there's going to be a refractory period. When things are in action, when you're sprinting fast, you can't suddenly stop, and answer questions, for people who are asking you. You can't also go in the other direction. You're running the 100-meter dash. You're going, you're doing an all or nothing thing. And so you're going to continue to do it. Okay? If you've jumped from a height down to the ground, you can't, in the middle of your jump, reverse your direction. You're going to have to finish your jump before you get back up and climb back up again to wherever it was that you jumped from. Okay, so that's the situation that we have. And so here we have our permeabilities. In this case, we only have 2 molecules to think about. When we get to the heart, we're actually going to have 3 molecules, and they're going to be actually more complicated than this. This is really simple and wonderful and straightforward by comparison. So we get sodium permeability, we get depolarization. That permeability stops because the channel's closed. Then we get the potassium to open up. Potassium opens up, there it is. And we get repolarization. And then the repolarization happens, and then the sodium pump rearranges everybody. And we have, again, now sodium on the outside, potassium on the inside, and we're back to the resting potential, just the way you like it. Okay? So that's our situation. And here they're showing us an event, and we're sort of in an axon here, or we could be in a dendrite, but we're moving directionally, and I think that that's what they want you to understand. Okay, and that we have this, how shall I say, we have an event right here, and it's going to result in going into an action potential, and they're trying to let us know that the size of the event is very specific. Okay, so the EMF generated by one stretch here of the membrane is going to be of a certain size, and there's a sweetness to the size. I want you to understand the sweetness to the size is that it's happening to be at the size of a Schwann cell. So we can go from the one side of the Schwann cell to the other side of the Schwann cell, and we'll talk about that more. But this is what's happening here with this. We have the propagation of an action potential, and that's what we need to understand, is that we have a resting potential where it's amber or yellow right here. We have the peak of the action potential at the red spot, and we have hyperpolarization following. Okay, so our action potential is moving along. Okay, so we have that idea going on here. Then we have a number of things that can happen where we get stimulation, but we don't cross threshold. We get stimulation, and the stimulus in this case, if it crosses threshold, we should get an action potential. Okay, so that's the idea here. Now they're going to describe for us the details of what's possible in the action potential. So here we have rest, 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 and then stimulation. Once we get stimulation, we get the sodium to flow. And because of the sodium permeability, if it goes past the threshold, which as you can see it has, then it will create the action potential. And they actually have different color coding here so that you understand that once this has happened, we're going to have the event. Do you see? This is the event. Okay, and they have a little discussion here about the potassium. Okay, that's the repolarization aspect right there. Okay, and now they've also bracketed some things up here. So once this event is happening, it's sort of like you've jumped off the the top of a building or of a table or something, and you're falling, and you're not going to be able to go in the reverse direction once you've jumped. Okay, so we have absolute refractory period. In other words, we have to pump the sodium back out again. We have to pump the potassium back in again in order to get that event to happen one more time. So this is an all or nothing event, and it's refractory, which is to say we can't get it to happen again until we get to a certain spot. Okay? Sometimes people refer to certain areas as partial refractory, but here they're just making it clear. Actually, they do have that, come to think of it. They do have a relative refractory. Generally speaking, we have to get back and rearrange our ions before we get back to the full event able to happen again. So this is relative refractory. This is complete refractory, or they're calling it absolute refractory. And this is relative or partial refractory. So with a strong enough signal, we could force something to happen in this area. Okay? So absolute and relative refractory periods, just the way you like it. Okay? And here they are discussing velocity, and I wanted you to understand that there is a difference in velocity, and some things that are moving most rapidly, they're moving at about 100 meters per second or even more. Okay, so this compares to about a meter per second in that which is going most slowly. Okay, so what determines whether something goes fast or slow? And one is axon diameter. As a rule, the larger diameter axon the larger diameter is faster and conducts impulses more rapidly. One way to make it larger, in essence, is to create this myelin sheath around it. The degree of myelination is going to make a difference. So action potentials propagate because they're generated by voltage-gated channels. So there's a difference between chemical-gated and voltage-gated. What we've been dealing with so far are voltage-gated channels. They're based on EMF. Okay, so if I get the energy close to my channels, my channels will open, my sodium channels will open. Okay, so I just need to have EMF. And the speed that's created by myelination is called saltatory conduction. So you can get things to happen very, very fast as a result of myelination.